Um, and one thing that I asked other folks to, you kind of touched on it a little bit when we were chatting earlier. What is one thing that you feel like during the pandemic, during lockdown, that we as a society, or maybe even you during your, private personal time, something that you like implemented in your daily routine that you think we should continue to do?
Yeah, I mean, a couple obvious ones, like I feel like people should wear masks when they're sick. I know that I don't think I will ever again enter an airport without masking, and it
Mhm.
is kind of unbelievable to me to think back on the way that I used to get on an airplane without a mask on. Now that seems uh like a terrible idea. And I think about how often I got sick while flying, and I'm just like, just mask in public spaces and at things like, at like a concert or like a con zine fest. Like, I'm probably gonna be a person who masks minimum at big events and at airports for the rest of my life, and I wish everyone would join me. Um,
Me too.
but I also say, like, I loved the way that so many events pivoted to online and that authors would do online book launch events. I loved online concerts, online, theaters showing like archived, like, plays that had been put on, like, just for free, like showing plays. Like, there were so many things that I watched online during the pandemic that were wonderful. I mean, I watched like 12, at least 12 full-length online concerts like during
Wow.
like 2020 and 2021, and they were so fun. And I was seeing artists that wouldn't necessarily tour in the US, or maybe would have been too expensive for me to see in person, or I just maybe when I might have not left my house for it, but I was like, oh, but if I can watch it from my bed in my pajamas, I will absolutely watch this concert. And I feel the same thing about like authors and book events. And so, like, I think that every author who releases a book should at minimum do one online book launch event like on Zoom, because there's just so many people who can't for whatever reason access an event, whether it's happening while they're working, or they live in a different time zone, or maybe there's some disability access barriers, whatever it is, who knows. um I think making sure that we're still doing online events and keeping them accessible for all sorts of folks who can't make it out to events is really important. So I know that's something I'm going to commit to, is like doing online events for things like book launches.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Do you feel like there are other accessibility things that we should implement? I know a lot of times, just because of my own illnesses, I feel like a lot of times people don't realize, that not everyone can lift their own things into cons or zines, helping folks load in and load out, or even mobility issues. Are there other accessible functions that you think folks should consider, especially in the area of art or zine making? Or
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you just hit on some of them. Like, for one, like, if you're holding a public event in a space that's not accessible to anyone who might be using like a wheelchair, a lift, or on crutches, like, you're not holding a public event. Like,
yeah,
um, and this is personal to me in part because my co-author on my current book is a wheelchair user. And so I've been thinking about this a lot. Like, when I hope, like, again, like, we're gonna do some online book launch events, but I hope we can also do some in-person events, and being like, we cannot and will not do an event at a space that's not wheelchair accessible, because my co-author needs to be able to come into the event. Um, so I mean, that's huge. And then one thing, I mean, I appreciate about like San Francisco Zine Fest is I think they do have policies around like scent, like asking people to not wear super strong like perfumes, body washes, even like very strong selling like shampoos. Because I do think that actually also post COVID, there are more people that are like sensory sensitive, including to things like scents. And that can, like, people who are also like easily set off with like migraines can be set off by scent as well as like light
sure.
and other things. So just trying to think, like, how can we make a space that is like, it's tough because there are times where people have opposing access needs, right? So like it's impossible to make a space that's like, going to be perfect for everyone.
Yeah.
But with like a certain amount of care and forethought, you can make a space that is like much more welcoming to a wider and wider and wider group. And I always appreciate every con, and like the cons that have still require masks.
Mhm.
Huge. I went to Geek Girl Con in Seattle last year. They required masks of all attendees and participants, and I had friends who were willing to go because of that, who wouldn't have gone otherwise. So,
Right.
yeah.
No, Oakland creates, you're gonna be wearing like they have to wear masks.
Yeah.
And I just went to an event. It was outdoors, but I felt like there's so many people, hundreds of people in my face that even though it's 25-mile-an-hour winds, I'm gonna put a mask on for at least most of this
Yeah.
because people are, when you're paying or doing transactions, they're like right here.
Yep.
It doesn't matter that we're outside.
Yep.
Um, also, is there any particular art supply, or because I know you review some art supplies, any art supply, or even just a new software, something, that's made your life a little easier when you're on a deadline?
I mean, for my majority of my work, I'm still just using Photoshop, which I don't really promote or support. And it's like, if you're an upcoming artist, don't get on the Adobe train. Get on a different train. Just like don't get started with Adobe Suite if you can help it. But it's what I know. So that is what I use for my comics work. But when I'm drawing traditionally, I did fairly recently find and buy this new to me set of marker. They're not like new. They're called mild liners.
Oh,
And part of what I really like about them is they have a brush tip on one end and they have more of a pen tip on the other.
nice.
So they've gotten two different line weights. They come in loads of colors, and they're not that expensive. I and also like they buy that they'll bundle like sets of like five or so that have kind of like a nice complementary limited palette. And this has actually become the tool that I've been doing a lot when I do sketchbooking. And I know you use markers a lot. Like you've long time been a marker artist. I really haven't. I really had never gotten into markers before I bought these about a year ago. I'd always been doing in my sketchbook more like tend to be like pencil, maybe one black ink pen, and then if I want to add colors, usually using like watercolor or something. But I kind of got tired of carrying around like a watercolor set. And so now I'm carrying around like a limited palette of markers and really having a good time with them. I'm becoming a marker convert, I would say. Yeah.
What's the name again? Give me the name.
It's mild liner.
Oh, nice. I'll put it in the description box.
Yeah.
I'll probably
Um,
check them out too and do a quick review.
yeah, why not? I don't actually know a ton about these, so like if you t play around with them, like to be honest, I can't even right now remember if they're waterproof. So like there's maybe better markers out there, but again, I'm a marker newbie, and these were the relatively inexpensive markers that I came across first, and I like them, and maybe they will make me more of a marker connoisseur in the future.
No, I'll totally check. That was going to be my next question. Are they waterproof? So
I don't know. Like, please do some tests
I will
and
test them out
do some marker science.
for sure, for sure. This is also a really, really good one. I'd love to hear are some words of encouragement that you would give to a young or emerging artist, and also yourself as a young artist. What would you
Hmm.
say? Some positive advice or words of encouragement?
I feel like one thing that helped me out a lot, and I'm so grateful that I kind of stumbled into it without maybe as much consciousness. And if I went back, I might even tell myself to do this more, is like just make friends with as many other artists as you can.
Mm,
Because doing something like comics can be a fairly solo activity. You spend so much time at your drawing desk, unless you're the kind of person who does a lot of drawing meetups. Um, but it can be a very kind of solo activity, and so can writing. Um, Making friends with other creators and getting yourself into some critique groups or just some sketch clubs or whatever it is, it can be such a huge benefit in a million ways. I mean, it can benefit your mental health. It's just fun to have friends. Also, then there's information sharing, people telling you, yeah, like I bought this new paper brand, or like I tried this new technique or this new software, and like there's like like the knowledge sharing. And also realizing that when you're meeting other artists who are around your same age and around your same position in their sort of career or hobby or education, those people are not your competition. Those
right,
people are your cohort.
right.
And those people are going to be the people that you come up with who are probably like applying to the same shows, maybe applying to the same galleries, perhaps applying to the same residencies or grants. But you guys should like all network together and like work on that grant application together, or like decide to go to the same show. Then you could split a hotel room. Like there's so many ways that having and knowing a lot of other artists who are around your same kind of level, they're trying the same stuff as you, is just a huge benefit and help. And being like, um, there will be times where you either see or are offered an opportunity also that you can't take, you don't have time, it doesn't fit in your schedule. And if you can then pass that along to another artist, like in your friend group, like
Yes.
incredible for multiple reasons. One, if the person who offered you the opportunity and you just say no, that kind of like closes the door. But if you say, hey, I can't do it, but I think so and so would be perfect, then you've built a bridge between that person and this other person. And maybe they go on to have like a really fruitful working relationship. And both of them remember as you as the person that like connected those dots.
100%.
So it means that you're still sort of in the loop of the connection, right? And just, yeah, like in general, having artist friends, having writer friends, having creative friends, it's so great. And like so many times you will also, I think, maybe as you become more ambitious, encounter projects that one person can't complete. And then you want to, you need to grab a colorist or you need a letterer or someone starts their like a small press and then they're going to publish your work. And just having those connections with other people is such a benefit. And being like, remember, like all of us artists, all of us at every level, we are like competition is corporations.
Yeah.
Our competition is like people who want to censor art. Like artists are our allies and our fellow workers and our friends and our comrades. And just trying to like meet people in a genuine way. I don't mean like in the networking way of like, what can this person like get me? I mean in the way of like, I'm jazzed about what you're making and you're jazzed about what I'm making. Let's make stuff together. And maybe if we like work together, we can make even more things. And that is just like really
No,
great.
build that community, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
that's really what it's all about. And like, yeah, sharing resources
Mm,
and sort of mutual aid in a true sense of the
mm,
word, right?
mm.
That's just such a lovely idea. And in practice, that's really what I strive for. It's like, yeah, let's all do this together. We're definitely not competition. That's not the vibe.
Yeah.
Also, let's see, perfect segue into this. Do you think art is just inherently political, or just is the act of making art political?
I thought you gave me these questions in advance. I've been thinking about this one. What I think is that yes, all art is political, but it can be either actively political or passively political.
Hmm.
And actively political art, including, I think, a fair amount of the stuff that both of us make, is in part when you're directly talking about the conditions of society or lived experiences or, you know, illness, politics, environmentalism, sort of things we would consider like that are generally framed as political. But I also think even if you are making art that is like you're just painting landscapes, there's no specific message.
Hmm.
I think that art is still political, but it's in a quieter and like more passive sense. And part of that is because as soon as you start digging into like who the artist is and what are the conditions that allow them to be an artist, politics immediately emerges. So say
Yeah.
someone is a full-time landscape painter. Is that
I don't know why
person
that makes me giggle. Sorry.
It's just an example I came up with. Just because like I think part of why I thought of this is because like landscapes sell really well in Sonoma County. So there's like a lot of visual artists who live here feel this like almost impulse that they need to make landscapes because they will sell, even if it's not the topic they care about the most. So then
Wow.
it's also like, but who are you making the landscapes for? Who is the audience who is purchasing these landscapes? Who wouldn't purchase maybe a political zine or a piece about like disability. You know what I mean? So then but it also comes in down to like, if you can say afford to be a full-time landscape painter, is it because you are married and on your spouse's health insurance? Is it because you are come from generational wealth? And then also if you look at say two landscapes by two different artists, but one of them is like on a framed, like a canvas and it's then like oil paints, which are very expensive and take 3 weeks to dry. And the other one is like a Sharpie sketch on a piece of like computer paper. You're
Wow.
also being like, do these two artists have access to a certain level, like different levels of like materials and then and maybe time and wealth? So like even two landscapes, I think, are at least passively political pieces of art
Sure.
because they're made by people who are affected by the conditions of the world.
Wow. I love that
That's my
answer.
opinion.
That's awesome. No, I love that answer, and I've tried to articulate that so many times, and sometimes people get it, but it's hard. You put it very succinctly, so I love that answer.
Thank you. I mean, I do think that a lot of my work is, I would say, a little bit more in the actively political, but I think even when I make a piece that in my opinion would be more passively political, I am still kind of thinking about like what does it mean for me, like a trans artist who usually is talking about gender, identity, sexuality, healthcare. What does it mean for me to take time to do like a landscape painting when
Mhm.
and even in myself, I like this calculus of like, do I want to take or that fanzine? Do I want to write a zine about my favorite K-pop group, or should I instead like spend that time writing about the defunding of libraries or something? You
Wow.
know what I mean? Like it's also I
Well,
think about in terms of where do I invest my own limited time and energy and resources to make art.
yeah. No, that hits the nail on the head. I mean, especially too when you talk about um personal as political, even something as simple, like you said, if I were to make oh God forbid I make a landscape painting, but if I
You
make one,
could.
I know I have in the past. If if I make one now, Jesus, how extremely like you said, that would take so much time away from things that I feel like pressing like right here in my face to be talking about, that that would truly be for me a political act of I'm almost even self-care, right? Because
Mhm.
the amount of time, because I use watercolors typically
Mhm.
to do something like that would be such a huge political act to say, oh, I'm gonna take a week or two and not talk about it. But I feel like I do that with my zombie comic book because it's
Mm.
100% for me, labor of love, and it just so happens that I feel like other people will get a kick out of it. And I think maybe that's why I'm having such a difficult time finishing this next issue because it's
Mm.
just 100% pure joy. That's my comfort zone
Mm.
is horror. So yeah, I'm giggling and laughing as I have zombies eat and kill people. So uh, and there's so many other things that I want to talk about that I feel like healthcare, discrimination in healthcare and access to care and even my own perzines. And so
Yeah.
taking time away from that and gosh, I've had so many discussions with people who I didn't realize were so affected by their health and mental health as well. That like I almost it's not I don't feel obligated, but I feel like, oh yeah, I'm really doing something, service is such that's a cringy word, but yeah, this is a discussion that people don't get to have often, and especially around making work around grief and loss and loneliness. So many people pour their hearts out to me at Zine Fest that I'm like, oh wow, like there is a need for it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Maybe because in the Western society, there's so much shame attached to grieving in a weird sense. And I've recently learned over the past couple of years that, yeah, it's not really a hot topic that people will feel, comfortable talking about. So I'm going to do more of it because we need it. And I think there's so many lonely people, so many people heartbroken, and not necessarily just losing their loved ones, but maybe just being displaced. There's grief that comes with that, or losing your job. There's this whole
Yeah.
grieving process that people kind of sweep under the rug and don't want to feel open to talk about that. And I feel like for me personally, losing so many people in my family that I had to process through making art. And yeah, I was it's a weird word to use, but pleasantly surprised that other people were
Mm.
going through that and wanted to talk about it. So that is, yeah, that's so the political I feel the the urge or the urgency to talk about those things before painting flowers and landscapes.
Okay. I just relate to so much of what you just said. And I do think that this country deeply lacks the language to express different types of grief and levels of grief. And that's a huge, there's like a gap in our vocabulary of how to talk about it. And then I also think that most artists, actually, I shouldn't generalize. I'll say this of just about, I'll make an I statement. I feel like I make work at times where I'm like, this piece is a gift to the world.
Mm,
And this other piece is a gift to myself. And I think it's important to make both kinds of work. And that's also what I think about when I'm terms like balancing my time. Like how much of it am I going to spend making work that feels like a gift or perhaps even sometimes a service to the world. I feel that way a little bit when I'm making things like I make like voting guides for most local elections. And I'm like, this isn't super fun and I'm not finding it like terribly creatively satisfying.
right.
But I really want there to be a good local voting guide, and nobody else seems to be making it right at this moment, so I'm going to make it. So that kind of thing feels like is more in that kind of realm, right? And then other times I'm like, yes, but today I will draw my favorite pop star because I want to, or
Yeah.
like a portrait of my cat or something like that. You know what I
Right.
mean? That's very like this is just satisfying mostly me. It's not impossible that those like more personal and what can feel like self-indulgent works can also at times be really meaningful to another person if
Yeah.
they see something in it, yeah, that's like a mirror for what they're going through. So it's also like it's I don't even want to say that like one is more valuable than the other. They are just simply different and they serve different purposes. But I think it's important for an artist to have a practice where they balance if they are the kind of person who makes the more what we might even call like public information PSA infographic D art or
Yeah.
like to also occasionally or not occasionally, often indulge whatever the kind of like whimsical side. So like you gotta draw your kind of downer health scenes, but also the zombie scenes. Like
Yeah.
you gotta draw your zombie scenes too. Like it's really important.
No, and also I think to, sort of to, circle back, I realized too that drawing and making zines or graphic novels around grief was a service to me.
Mm,
At first I thought, oh, I'll make something that people can wait,
mhm.
this is for me. I'm the first customer.
You're the
So
first reader. Yep.
yeah, and that was very enlightening and good, for my
Mm,
my mental health. So it works both ways.
mm, mm, mm,
So I'm not going to hold you too much longer, but one thing I did want to ask, and since you said you grew up in Santa Rosa and you currently live in Santa Rosa, what would be your dream studio setup? Where would it be, your location, and what would be the amenities that you would want to have in like your top chef's kiss dream studio?
Ugh. Oh my gosh. I mean, for one thing, I would just have a lot more space than I currently have. I don't know. Maybe it would be in Sonoma County. I actually don't feel quite as attached to like where exactly this place is physically, but I would definitely love to have a whole room that's an art studio where there's space for like a desk and a big window and a lot of wall space to display art, other people's art that inspires me. I would love to have some big flat file folders to keep physical art. I also, of course, need a lot of bookshelves because it's also a library. So we need like two or three whole walls of bookshelves. Maybe there's like a comfortable couch too, and oh, probably like at least a sink and like a hot pot, if not like a little kitchenette, because I want to have be able to have people to come over for tea. We can sit on my comfortable couch and have tea and talk about our art practice. And maybe there's a whole separate room that has like a big table for hosting things like zine workshop or like mending party. Um, and maybe there's a guest room, so out of town artists who are coming into town for events could stay in my studio as their guest room. So we're gonna need at least one bathroom that also has a shower. Let's just say it's got a full kitchen. Basically, it's a whole house. It's a whole house for my art. Yep,
Nice.
yep, that's what I need.
Love
Yeah.
it. Love it. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me, Maya. Like, this has been amazing.
Mm,
You are wonderful. Your work is wonderful. I appreciate you spending time. Can you shout out your Instagram, Patreon, all those
mm.
good things, website?
Yes, I am red gold sparks on most of the social medias as long as they last and before they crumble. You can find me there on Instagram, Blue Sky, Tumblr, and then my Patreon is patreon.com/Maia Kobabe, where I do share a lot of zines, sketchbook stuff, including some stuff that doesn't go up on other places anymore because it just feels increasingly bad to post on Instagram. Um, and yeah, I'm working on my third book right now, which is a middle grade graphic novel, hopefully due out from Scholastic Graphics in 2026. And keep an eye out for it when it comes. And yes, I enjoyed this conversation so much. And it's been a while since we've sat down and talked one-on-one. And I really enjoyed this. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. With that, we're gonna wrap up. Appreciate you. Thank you so much.